Members of the Public Naming Committee, thank you so much for being here today. It is 5:36. We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Johnson, will you call the roll?
Mallory Alder. Here. Sam Brown. Ramsey Cohen. Gloria Deathridge. Deidre Harper. Shayna Love. Councilwoman McKenzie.
Here.
Jack Neely. Ben Ream. Here. Mark Reel. Aaron Streeter. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, next is approval of minutes. We have minutes of the September 19th meeting. Do we have a move to approve? Thank you. Good second. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to, oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, please say aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. I'm so used to being on the other end of this, so bear with me, please. Okay, so the fourth item is public comments germane to the agenda items. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Councilwoman Ryder is signed up.
Awesome. Councilmember Ryder, thank you for being here. And Councilmember Ryder is the former chair of this committee. Thank you for being with us today, and you will have 5 minutes.
Just blinking at me. Oh, there, never mind. Now it works. I don't expect to take 5 minutes, and I expected you guys maybe to speak before me. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background and history because I think that's important to everything we do. Something that I usually look into when we vote on many of the things I vote on at council. When I first came to Public Property Naming Committee, I came as a citizen member like many of you. So great launching board for running for council, by the way, if I want to pitch that idea to you. And then I became a council member on the committee, and then I became the chair. And one of the challenges to being on the Public Property Naming Committee is members of the committee didn't feel like they had any guidance for the requests that were coming in to us. And the requests came from all over the place, be community members, the administration, Congressman Burchett gave us one time. So they come from a lot of different places, honoring everyday citizens, people that are active in the community, as well as people who've served in office or worked for the city or the government in some capacity. And the members of the committee just didn't feel like they had any criteria and guidelines. So over the course of, what turned out to be COVID, we started this process, and some of you up here were part of it and went along with me on the journey. As you guys all know, COVID became a focus for people, and public property naming was probably not foremost in anyone's mind. So over the course of prior to COVID and during the shutdown, and I think somewhere towards June is when we voted on what you have now in front of you. So I just wanted to give you guys that background as to why there are these guidelines, because before there were these things that are codified, there was kind of nothing. And folks would basically turn to me when I was chair and they're like, I got nothing, no reason to say no, and nothing to guide me on saying yes either. So that's where this came from. Background-wise, I just did a lot of research, and some staff also helped. I think some planning staff, staff in the office probably did, and folks that work for the administration, and looked at rules and ordinances across the entire country to see what the best practices were. As you might imagine, it's all across the board. Some people do one thing, some people do another thing. Kind of compiled those and looked at best practices, presented them to the group. And then by the time it got to council, we were in a COVID Zoom environment. So it was not a face-to-face conversation. I don't say that to demean anything that's here. I just want to give you guys the context of how we got there and what you have. And then I just wanted to give you guys my vote of support, since I didn't want anybody to question and say, well, this wasn't done that long ago. Why would we be looking to edit things? I think this is a good point to look at it. You're back in a face-to-face environment. You're able to have a robust discussion or and talk about it. And I think it's a good, healthy point to look at things 5 years down the road and how it's impacted what gets turned in, what you vote on, is this enough? Do you want to look at more things in the future to add to it? So that's all I wanted to say, is I think it's a fair time to look at it, and I wanted you to know why you have it and how it got where it's at. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryder. Does anyone have any questions for Councilmember Ryder before she takes her seat? And she's already back to her seat. Okay, thank you for that context. Mr. Johnson, it looks like we also have just a couple of things as far as just some grammatical things we want to clean up. Do you want to go through those first, and then we go through the,
I think it'd be appropriate to go through the ones that are distributed first.
okay, that sounds good. So, members of the committee, if you will just follow along on page, I think we're starting on page 2, and all right, let's start on page 2. Mr. Johnson, will you walk us through these, please?
We're glad to. On page, packet page number 5 of this, this is in the section beginning or entitled Types of Naming and Renaming and Criteria for Consideration. In subsection C, number 2, there's a proposal to strike through language commercially concerned and corporate-related recognitions. If this were to be adopted, that criteria would be the following shall not be considered for purposes of naming or renaming, and it would only read individual family tributes, commercially concerned and corporate-related recognitions would be struck through. So that's the first one.
So they're saying we can consider commercially concerned or corporate-related recognition?
Not in this particular section. It looks like we addressed that further into the document.
I would read this to no longer exclude commercially concerned or corporate-related recognitions from consideration.
Committee members, would we like to go ahead and vote on these individually as we're going through them, or do you want to go through them all first and then we go back? What's the,
I think for following along purposes, it would be good to go through all the proposals. And then we can have this all part of a greater conversation because it's all.
we'll give that a try. Okay, Mr. Johnson, if you can,
Just leave your-
okay. Thank you.
The next one is also on packet page number 5, also within criteria for consideration of naming requests, that's subsection C. This is number 4. Requests for namings in honor of a natural person should also consider the following, and this concerns living persons. So absent extraordinary or extenuating circumstances, the proposed honoree shall be deceased. Approvals to honor living persons, natural persons, would require, presently it reads unanimous support from the Public Property Naming Committee, the mayor, and council. The proposal is to strike through unanimous and insert a 2/3 vote of this committee and 2/3 support from council. So that's the next, that's the second edit. Following, in the same section, there is the proposal to add a criteria as subsection 6. And it would read, for corporate-related recognition, the entity must have made a significant contribution, monetary, land, or et cetera. Any naming request for a public building or structure after a company shall have attached information relating to the entity's history and contribution to the property. So that is an addition to the section. And lastly, what's being proposed under the section related to members of the committee, the composition of the committee, this is simply a update to reflect that the current name for the Planning Commission is no longer the Metropolitan Planning Commission, it's the Knoxville-Knox County Planning. So that's the, those are all the suggestions being made here.
have any questions or discussion regarding the changes?
I would like to raise concerns over striking the portion. Hello? Okay. Sorry, longtime listener, first time caller. I would like to raise concerns over essentially making it easier for corporations to put their names on public buildings. I know we do have a few already in the city, whether it be HGTV Overlook at Lakeshore Park as well as Covenant Health, but it's also under my understanding that the naming of those properties fell under different committees. I think one was the Sports Authority and one may have gotten through an ulterior or alternative avenue by going through the Lakeshore Park Foundation for the naming. I just worry that if we open it up, it creates a possibility of certain corporations coming in, putting names on buildings, and then it kind of will present that Knoxville's for sale. And I think that's something we really want to discourage, especially if we're trying to keep the integrity of our public buildings and our spaces and our local government. I don't want to send the message that corporations can come in and influence.
Forgive my ignorance, is there a provision within these guidelines for the denaming of something? If we're naming something, what about if we want to strip a name from something?
It is in there.
Ms. Baum, at the very end, okay. Do you want to,
Reassessment?
Yes, reassessment, it's on packet page 7, subsection F.
could you read that one for us?
Yes,
Mr.
of course.
Johnson?
Reassessment, approved namings are bestowed with the intention that they will be permanent. However, the city and the committee will retain the right to reassess any naming in the future if facts, circumstances, and/or conditions arise that make it prudent for the city, on behalf of the public interest, to amend, alter, or remove the name of a street or public property.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Mal.
Matt. I share your concern about the perception that a corporation can simply come in and put their name on something. Obviously, we exist to provide guidance on that, and then council is ultimately responsible. But it does present a complication. We did a couple of years ago when I first got on this committee. We named something in a new park that Covenant Health, I think, had committed, or was it Covenant?
I think you're referring to Morningside Park and the Blue Cross.
Yeah.
Yes.
They came in, they donated a bunch of like playground equipment or something, and or healthy living equipment, and then they put their name on that. And I don't think it was a full park. I think it was just that portion of the park, if I recall correctly. So I think there's a benefit to it in that corporations have to give in order to receive that. My concern personally is that if a corporation starts doing something that we as the city find distasteful, building prisons in the middle of a swamp, for example, or an individual, we uncover information about that individual that was not known to us at the time. They turned out to be involved in some sort of unsavory activity. To me, as long as we have a robust mechanism for that, that's less concerning to me. But I hear what you're saying.
Maybe I'm just biased because I work in marketing, so I think everything's psychological warfare. But I think specifically with Morningside, what you're talking about, I was made aware of that one when I first raised concerns reading the agenda. And I looked on the city's website. Unless that hasn't been updated, I'm not sure if the official name of Morningside Park is related to Blue Cross Blue Shield or if it's just kind of a sign under it, because it's still listed as Morningside. I have no problem if a corporation wants to give a lot of money and we give them a very pretty aluminum sign thanking them for their contribution. But as far as because when you give something a name, you more or less give it ownership. And again, coming from a marketing perspective, very rarely do corporations give large sums of money for altruistic reasons. It's normally to kind of cover. I think there's a certain basketball stadium that more or less falls under some of that right now.
So let me interject as it relates to Morningside Park and the Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that was part of the grant, and that grant was open, I think, across the entire state, maybe larger than just the state. And that was part of the grant that if whoever was awarded that grant, that park portion, so I think it's the Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthy Park portion that just happens to sit inside of Morningside Park, but by no means is that park renamed for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Gotcha.
That is still Morningside Park. And I want to say that I know since I've sat in this seat, you've only convened a meeting once, this is maybe twice. So I don't know that there's been a huge appetite for corporations trying to get things named after them. However, who's to say what the future holds as it relates to that? I like the fact that we do have that section under F in section 2-780 where we can reassess. And any member of this committee as well as the public could always come before this body to bring us that evidence that says we need to reevaluate the naming of something corporate, and potentially, I would say, anything that we've named. Is that a true statement, to your knowledge? We don't have our attorney.
I'm not familiar with any reassessment that's been done in the past 10 years, but it is an option still available to you.
So I think we're covered with that section of it. But again, it's always going to come before this committee, and I think this is where, and I'm going off, so it's going to be you all as committee members to ask those hard questions, to be able to do some research, and be prepared to ask whoever comes before us and presents that, the questions that are germane to concerns, potential concerns. So I think that that's an excellent point, being from the marketing realm of it.
I mean, I have to say, I found that point I'm so sorry.
Put your mic on. There you go.
I just wanted to give some comments on that, on the Blue Cross Healthy Living area of Morningside Park as well, because I was on the committee at that point, and I voted against the renaming because I didn't think there was an avenue in the ordinance that allowed us to do that. So I voted against it at that time, and I kind of appreciate an avenue being put into the ordinance that can recognize, given a large financial contribution, that we can consider that. I may be more of a rule follower, so reading the text really accurately, I thought that there was not an avenue to vote in favor of that at the time. So I do kind of like the change.
So that actually, before I go to you, Sam, I just wonder in those situations that we may have to get a law opinion on this, because if there is a grant that the city applies for and that is a part of the clause of that grant, I wonder if it would be germane for that proposal to come before the Public Naming Committee. Do we have an opinion, or should we get an opinion on that?
I mean, I do think it's worth noting do we change an entire ordinance because one particular instance may or may not have been a whoops a vote or it fell through the cracks?
Would you have an opinion on that, Ms. Ball?
I just wanted to make a comment, not exactly on that, but slightly related to what you were mentioning, Ms. McQuincy. I am Cheryl Ball. I'm the Chief Policy Officer for the City of Knoxville. If sometimes when you apply for a grant, and most of you have applied for grants, so you know, sometimes the contracts have things in them that aren't always in the actual grant application because they sort of consider it their standard legal documentation. I'm not saying that's what happened with this particular one because I was not with the city at the time, and my husband was actually serving on this particular committee for that Blue Cross Blue Shield conversation. But anyway, but there are times when that comes across after the fact. So I do think that some flexibility on when that would come might be appropriate, depending on, I'm not saying it shouldn't come before the property naming committee, but I don't know that we always know that in advance, because sometimes that's considered a part of like what they think, oh, well, of course they're gonna name it after us, and they don't think that that's necessarily always important to disclose on the front end. So it might be on the front end if we know, and it could be on the back end if we don't know until we are already awarded.
Other thoughts or comments around that?
I didn't have a comment or thought on that. I had just a general question about this proposal. Oh, okay. So do we know exactly the origin of this request? Like, as far as the restriction being put in the ordinance, is that something that was there originally? And what is the provenance of the request to take it out, if we have that context?
So I don't think she's listening, but Councilwoman Ryder, he had a question about.
Is that what you were talking to, Lauren? I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay, actually. Go forth. What was your question? I was
Yeah,
looking at something
so
else.
if
Yeah.
we looking in, on the, let's see, what is this? This would be packet page 5, the first proposed amendment there in some
Individual
sections.
family tributes,
Yes.
commercially concerned and
so
corporate-related
I
recognitions.
just wanted just some context of
Sure.
why we want to take that restriction out.
Well, I wouldn't be the one to answer that question. Well, I mean, I can tell you as a council member who approves the city budget why we might consider taking it
Okay.
out, if you want me to answer it in that manner. As a former PPNC chair, I'll answer you in two ways. How this got into here. I looked at code for cities across the country, and many cities do it this way. Some cities don't do it that way. And what I did, if you go back and if you have so much time on your hand and want to be that bored, if you don't have enough to do this weekend, you can go back and watch the old PPNC meeting, and I would say that Mr. Johnson, I believe you might have been here. Andrea, I believe you were here. I didn't guide people either way. I said, here's what I found. What do you think? I put it in here. And I didn't get a strong reaction from people in the committee. So I love that you guys are having a discussion. Thank you for being like big players on this. I'm not denigrating people in the past, but I like that you guys are getting into the meat of it. I gave people options, and I said, this is what I saw across the country, and some people don't do it. And I offered it up, and we rolled with it, right? And again, we were rolling into COVID, and so really, is this what people really cared about at that moment in time? They're like, yes, sounds great, Lauren, let's move on with our lives. So that's how you got what you got in front of you. Then if I were to speak to you as a council member, we have a budget that is at time constrained. There's a lot of things that we like to do. We have, I think, $2 billion in sidewalks on the table in parent responsibility zones to serve our schools and our neighborhoods that we can't fund. And I'm not suggesting that we label all our sidewalks with a corporate name. I'm saying that there may be a time where we have facilities here or large buildings, which is what you see in other cities, where that's how they fund major alterations, renovations, is through naming rights. So I think maybe, again, you wouldn't necessarily say, let's put in the rules that we can never consider that. Maybe you edit the rules so you could consider it and you could say, you know what? I don't want to give the naming rights to Voldemort Incorporated. You might not want to go with that, but you might want to. Maybe you want to name something after something, and maybe the benefits and the ideology and the whatever of the entity align, and it is a good choice and it is a good step. And so being able to discuss that, and what I will say is anything you guys vote on here in PPNC goes through both your vote, which is community input as non-electeds, and then it also goes to council. So there's multiple opportunities for the community to come in and weigh in and say, I don't agree with that, I don't approve, I think it's great. But if you put into the rules not allowed, people might not apply, they might not bring it forth, and you never get to the point of discussing it. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's great that you guys are discussing this. I don't encourage you to stay here for hours, but I love that you're getting into it because I think this is important. And I think that's part of the reason I came here today is to say, we didn't really debate it last time. And I didn't want people to just say, great, Lauren, whatever you say. I don't like that. I want you to discuss the merits of it because I don't believe that I was dishing up the be-all, end-all. So, yeah. On a side note, Mr. Johnson, I sent you an email. If you'd look at that. Okay. Oh, you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sidebar stuff, okay. Just go ahead and cut your,
This might be a question for you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Johnson. It's related to the gentleman's question. The changes that are before us now today, did they come from the administration, or were they accumulated requests from the
So it's
community?
It's an
or-
accumulation and a combination, because I've been getting calls and concerns and people asking about why we do this, why we don't do that, as far as naming things, that had me to go back and look at it. And in the course of it, felt like if there's anything additionally that we need to consider, let's do that. So, again, I like the fact, as Lauren said, at least giving us that option as a public naming committee to be able to vet, be that first line of vetting whether or not we agree if that particular naming right is appropriate. And if we vote that 2/3 of us support that and feel that way, then we send it on to city council. If we don't, then it does not get to city council. So that was one of the reasons. And again, my apologies that, I kind of waited a while to do that, but rather than keep calling us back, for one-off things, just kind of good timing. Yes, sir.
I find very much persuasive the committee members' comments that the city being perceived as for sale, public property being perceived as for sale is problematic at best. I appreciate the clarification with respect to the Blue Cross at Morningside Park. That's really helpful. But I also think it's, the part reason you have committees is to be able to debate individual issues. I will say this, at a minimum, I don't think that this provision is restrictive enough with what is meant to be considered a significant contribution. The way this is written, somebody gives us a bunch of money and we name it after them, or we can consider naming it after them. For it to go on public property, I think the standard should be higher. It should include some sort of maybe a historical provision, or it's a local company that's got historic ties to the area and also has a vested interest in seeing the county or the city advance. Not just McDonald's comes in here and wants to have the McDonald's sidewalks in front of all the elementary schools. I mean, that's an extreme example, obviously, but my point is the reason for consideration I don't think is narrow enough in order for that problematic entity to be considered for naming. I don't think I would ever say we can't rule it out, couldn't ever do it, but I would want it to be the strictest scrutiny probably that we provide.
I echo your sentiments. Like, in order for me to be okay with the possibility of corporate naming, I would want better defined safeguards in, what is that, 5 or 6 math, of kind of saying, because so an outside corporation comes in, gives us $1, but maybe something's politically fueled, that's technically a monetary contribution. And this committee does roll over and new opinions, new faces will come on. If we're looking that we're setting the standard moving forward, I think we should have some sort of standard.
Suggestions?
And I think, honestly, I think Lauren brought up a really good point. If it is looking for opportunity to bolster the city's budget, what are the city's needs? If the city is coming to us wanting to expect this because maybe there's all these funds we're not getting, it's hard for us right now on a first read of this to know what we don't know. So if we're saying no to this, I would like to see examples or something else that kind of speaks to what other cities are doing instead of saying other cities do it, or what are some of the safeguards that other cities have put into place, or what are some of the direct specific examples of instances where the city of Knoxville has lost funds because we are not accepting corporate dollars. I don't think we have enough information here right now to make such a big change in our ordinance, in my personal opinion.
Other comments? Yes.
Another issue in the phrasing of that is it says commercially concerned and corporate-related recognitions, and there's a big difference between naming something for the memory of Harold's Deli and Amazon. They're both commercially concerned, but if we're talking about corporate-related, that implies to me something from out of town that's purely profit-driven. And it might be something fondly remembered, like Harold's or Long's Drugstore or something like that, that's a commercially, and that would be a slam dunk to name something for them. Or the guy that 170 years ago, there's a guy right here where we are, approximately here, a free person of color named Alfred Anderson, who sold ice cream, and he sold the best ice cream anybody ever had. He later became the pastor of Logan Temple AME Zion Church, and a major figure in civil rights in the post-Civil War period. But if we were to name something, if we call this the Alfred Johnson Ice Cream Plaza, that would be technically a commercially concerned thing. But it wouldn't be anything like, some, major corporation coming in and doing what you're saying, which does give me the heebie-jeebies too.
Good comments. Yes.
Jack raises an interesting point. When we're talking about the standards that could be applied to something like this, if we're reflecting the spirit of the rest of the ordinance, which is that in all but the most extreme circumstances, somebody we want to name something after needs to be deceased, a commercial concern that is no longer doing business and therefore doesn't present any conflict of interest, I think would be a more appropriate use of the statute in order to remove the worry that there's a quid pro quo going on. If we are going to go with an active corporation, then again that would have to be like the strictest scrutiny provided. But if there was in either of the examples that you provided, I don't think that we'd be as worried with the conflicts that would be present in those.
Dialogue. Any other comments? Yes.
I was wondering if we might consider revisions 1 and 3 kind of together, and revision number 2 as a separate item. Since we've had a lot of conversation about corporations and very little about the second one, and I'd really like to finish the conversation on one topic before moving to the other one.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any other questions or concerns outside of this particular item? Any dialogue around?
So just so I'm clear, he asked that we would move for consideration on subsection 4A and subsection 6.
We want to
I was-
separate those, correct?
Yeah, I was intending to group together 2B and subsection 6.
Oh, to group those together. Gotcha. Okay. I gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I follow you now.
So that means we will vote on those, we'll vote on the first set and then we'll vote on 6, correct?
I think we vote on 2B and
2B
6.
together?
And then we move on to talking about the 2/3.
Okay, someone making the motion?
I move that we do not accept the changes for items 2B and 6 at this time, pending further clarification.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute, hold on. Oh, further debate before we vote.
Would either of the, or any of the people who would vote in favor of, I guess, tabling that for the time being, be willing to provide alternative language that they might feel more comfortable with? as part of the motion?
I would not, just because I don't think we have adequate further language. I think that would need to be vetted through somebody who knew what they were doing.
And related to my question, I was asking, as Lauren mentioned, if there's city budget that we're missing, I would like to see examples of possible grants or other funding that we haven't received, so that, I don't know if I'm allowed to give council homework.
No, I appreciate that comment. that
Councilwoman
you're
Ryder
asking them to come
mentioned-
back with information.
You mentioned something about some dollars being tied up for sidewalks that we can't touch.
There's nothing specific about sidewalks and corporate dollars. That was a fictitious, let me just say this. Prior to my being on council, let me give you a real life example. Prior to my being on council, there was a lot of discussion about making updates and renovations to the Coliseum. That's a very pricey building. It's got some years on it. There's not a bundle of capital to fund stuff. The Ice Bears play there. They want better facilities. Early in my tenure, we did do some things there. There's like the Jumbotron and some other things. We gave them some minor things. There've been some other things that we've had to pull out of emergency funds to do some emergency funding. I think HVAC repairs or the chiller or something. But there's some desires, and I'm not telling you guys that we've got a corporation over here in the wings ready to fund these things. I'm saying we have real conversations every budget year about there's some real renovations that need to happen here, and we don't have the capital for it. And so that is an example. The Coliseum predates me. I've lived here for 20 years. We all own home. Well, you all live somewhere, right? And everything needs major renovations at some point, roofs and HVACs. When those things come up, I just being frank, we don't have this giant mound of money over here to cover these things. And I'm not saying that we're broke. I think the city budget is in a healthy place. We just don't have mounds of money waiting to rebuild things like the Coliseum or the convention center. So, in my time on council, and Councilwoman McKenzie and I came in the door at the same time so she can speak to it, there's a lot of facilities across the city, and we do the best we can stretching and doing minor repairs. I think the Coliseum's a great example of that, because it's like, well, we did what we could. But there were people who wanted the whole thing raised and a whole new thing and some pretty extensive stuff. And that kind of conversation happened before we came on council. There was I think an analysis of how much it would take to do all the things. And Mayor Rajero was like, we can't touch that, but here's what we can do. So that's just a real life example of if there are people who would love to see a lot of things happen at that facility, and we don't have the capital to do it, to be frank.
And I think my question to this, so for example, Covenant Health Park, that it is named that such because it was a joint venture. And
It's not owned by the city.
Right. And so, well,
Technically, yes.
Well, then, so also HGTV Overlook, which is part of Lakeshore Park, where technically that's owned by the city, but it's managed by the Lakeshore Park Foundation. So if we're talking hyperbole of naming these places, would essentially that specific example fall under this committee for vote, or would it go through another?
The Coliseum belongs to the city. Yeah. Lakeshore Park is I can't really speak to that. There's all kinds of things that happen there because of the foundation and the fact that it wasn't the city's land. Not my district, sorry that I'm not knowledgeable about Lakeshore Park.
Those just
so-
come as examples, because it'd be one of
Yeah.
those, if we're talking about, and I guess that's why I'm asking, I would like to see kind of tying this potential to this, of knowing also within what would be the governance of this committee to vote on, because there are those other avenues where other naming opportunities have gone through.
I think those things, I think what I will say to you guys is, right now, I think the way the ordinance is worded, you would never see those applications and you would never debate them, period. Not for Covenant. We did have conversations about what about when the stadium's done? It's not the city's property. It's the stadium authority, which is created by the two governments, but it's not governed. The county does not have public property naming committee. And actually, we've been commended for doing this. I believe it was, I don't remember which council member or a city employer, whoever gets credit for it. It happened during the Haslam administration that PPNC got formed by council. So kudos to the city of Knoxville for doing that, but the Sports Authority technically owns the stadium. We do not, and that's why. But we own the stadium. We own a lot of things. Last night at dinner, we own 99 parks. But we're not renaming our parks. Please don't take anything I throw out as an example as necessarily a renaming thing. We're gonna put a name on every plant in the room. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's not up for debate.
Aaron, to ask your earlier question, I'm sure we'll have alternative language submitted. I think there's just way more room for debate and clarification about what the standard should be than what's present here. In the spirit of my motion is not to just say, okay, we're done, we'll never talk about it again. It's just that we're not ready yet.
Is the general consensus of the committee that we would like this to go back for additional context and potentially some examples to be brought before us for further discussion and dialogue at a later date? And that would be on C, correct? Okay, well, that means we'll all be able to get together again here relatively soon. Okay, so do we need a motion to table 6, or just make it and put it in the notes?
I think we need a vote, but, so it would be 2C, or rather C, subsection C2, change at that one, and subsection 6. That's my understanding of what is desired.
Do you have the motion?
Yeah, deny. That was your motion? Okay.
Okay, and we have the second, correct? You have the
Yes.
second recorded? Okay, all those in favor to deny this motion,
To deny the recommendation.
to deny the recommendations?
Can I ask quickly, if we're voting to deny the recommendation, that doesn't in any way preclude this coming back with different language? Sure. Okay.
Correct, yes. Okay. All those in favor to deny?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, ayes have it. Okay,
This is one in favor, or one opposed? Okay.
okay.
Did you vote?
I'm gonna go with the majority.
Okay.
Okay? All righty, so now we are going to, could you read the next?
Yes. The next, returning this, the ones remaining are the 2/3 vote for honoring a living person. This is subsection 4A.
Okay. Have a motion? Okay. All those in favor?
I'd like to have some discussion on this one.
Okay.
Um, If everybody would bear with me, I was once on a board where I decided that my honorary title was the contrarian, so, but
Is that official?
I did some research on this item, and it might have been information that was compiled. It was compiled by UT's Municipal Technical Advisory Service, MTAS. It might have been compiled as part of Councilwoman Ryder's initial assembly of this ordinance.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share what they found when they did kind of a across the country analysis of what other places have done. The District of Columbia prohibits the use of names of living persons for public property, requiring them to have been deceased for at least 2 years. The only exception is for sponsored recreational facilities. The U.S. government, who I am employed with, prohibits naming post offices after living individuals. GSA disallows naming buildings after living people except in exceptional circumstances, presidents, vice presidents, and with a whole complicated list of exceptions, persons who are over 70 or 75 years old, depending on those considerations. And here in Tennessee, Nashville disallows honorary street renamings related to living persons with no exceptions. Memphis disallows naming streets full names in any circumstances. Bristol disallows naming public property after living individuals except with unanimous consent of city council. So an exception that's very much similar to ours. Franklin, Tennessee prevents streets from being named after a living person with 0 exceptions. So MTS sort of gave their understanding of the reasoning. A lot of places just don't have any rules at all, but the places that do have rules, they're very similar to what we have now. And the reasons that they give for this are generally potential for embarrassment. If a person's reputation is tarnished after a renaming, it can create an awkward situation for the municipality that bestowed the honor. And for example, I lived downtown when the downtown Knoxville Visitor Center was named the Gloria Ray Building, and then I lived downtown when it was unnamed the Gloria Ray Building. Incomplete legacy, a person's legacy is often better understood after their death, allowing for a more informed decision on whether to bestow such an honor, and I appreciate that one as a historian. And then the biggest one maybe to me is ethical considerations, that renamings can be seen as premature, driven by a desire to curry favor or secure donations or special consideration. I mean, none of those might be true, but ethical considerations, should come into any sort of decision about that. And if you're opening up the ability for the public to perceive that they're ethical problems, then those ethical problems exist. And then personally, I just feel that it's a little bit distasteful this is my own personal opinion, I feel it's a little bit distasteful for public property to be named after individuals that are still living when that legacy is not really determined, because it does give a sort of strange preferential treatment. I know they tend to be named after public individuals who have been public employees, and they tend to honor the people who are already the most well-paid, most recognized, best remunerated. They already have a legacy in that regard. So I have a problem with the idea of loosening ethical standards in a time period when we are just looking around at our national environment and seeing ethical standards just collapsing in every direction. I have a lot of concern about reducing them in this ordinance when this really seems like a solution in search of a problem. There has not been a rash of applications to this committee for living individuals to be honored in this way and having those applications be voted down by the committee. So my assessment of that would say that the existing process is working pretty well. And if we want to go back to a system where we end up having looser rules or no rules as we once had, I have a lot of concerns about that.
I want to say one thing. The reason that we haven't seen them is because they're not allowed, because people have reached out to me on numerous occasions wanting to honor people of high regard and stature who've made a lot of contributions, especially in my community. But right now, it's not even open for discussion the way that it's written. So I just kind of want to throw that caveat out there. And it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that about the other cities and the information that MTS provided. And I think that, we haven't seen a flood of them. I don't know that, even if we were to vote to change this, and I think maybe at least 2 of those people might now be deceased. It's been a while, because this has just kind of been an overtime thing since I've served on council. But I think for me, and all of us have our own personal opinions, I do think that there are people who make significant contributions, and a lot of it, and I don't necessarily think of younger people per se, but people who have actually made contributions in our city and in their communities that have endured a lot to change things for the better in our city. And so I guess I'm one of those people that believe in I like giving people their flowers while they're living. You know, I think that once they're gone, that's just kind of for us in a sense. But with any and everything, I believe the evidence that has to be presented and brought to us, and I'm not sure, you know, in the past, if it's not been as thorough and as it needed to be, but I do like having that option, and that's just my one opinion. So look forward to hearing additional, you know, dialogue around that.
I guess I agree with much of your sentiments, and to the point that you're making, there's people who have not been allowed. I'm curious, the people who you may know of or who has approached you, what's the difference between them and Barbara Kelly, who was approved at our last meeting, and it's noted that she is currently a living person. So kind of as the council member said, it doesn't seem like this rule is hindering a lot if it has that this previous person that we just approved the minutes of was approved for the naming rights. And I worry, you know, I know there isn't a naming committee for the county, but more or less the county is kind of going through this right now with the Bean Juvenile Detention Center, where the namesake was recently removed from, or retired early from his position. So I think having the safeguards in place of keeping it just a little harder, because we are the first line of defense, helps prevent public embarrassment later.
Do we note it? Yes, sir.
I was just saying, you said that some are not able to apply, but the standard is unanimous right now, not 2/3. So who hasn't been able to
No.
apply?
People who are living.
Right, but it says right now, we just approved somebody who was living. Approvals to honor a living individual require unanimous support from the Public Property Naming Commission. So it's not changing it to we don't allow it to we do allow it. It's changing the standard for approval, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think some of that, and then I'll also say, not that that would impact anyone sitting around this table, because we love everybody. But let's say that someone brought a name that it was someone that we cringe at a little bit. So if that were the case, would that even be fair? So again, open for discussion and for vote for us to make that determination and that decision. And I think Barbara Kelly has been really the only one that we've seen since I've sat on this committee. So, okay, what other discussion would we like to, anybody else have any additional comments?
And to the point of maybe not necessarily being a current hindrance, when I was looking through the names of the parks that we currently have as related to our previous topic, it seems like a good handful of our parks have been named after living people. Victor Ash, for example, is one. Last I checked, he's alive. But then also there's a city employee, Farhan. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. I don't know if they're still alive, but there's a park named after that individual in honor of their service. And there's at least one other that I know of it was named after because they donated the land. And everything that I could see, those individuals were still alive at the time of the naming.
Let's see the parks. Any other comments?
Yeah, well,
discussion?
it's been a pet peeve of mine, just like Aaron, that I don't prefer not to see anything named for anyone alive, and just a kind of a personal preference. And I had occasion, and I suppose UT has its own rules, but I worried a few years ago when there was a perfectly fitting, workable name called Stadium Drive that was changed to Philip Fulmer Way or something like that. And I thought, this guy's middle-aged. He's still he's retiring from UT, but might he someday be the coach for Alabama and come back and get to play on Fulmer Drive away? And I tend to think it's a matter of safety and kind of a matter of respect in a way. I think that when things get named for someone after they're dead, it can mean something more. Often there are things named for people who are alive, and by the time they die, you've forgotten who they are, and you don't know, what's that name for? It's just a name. But I would, if somebody does cringe a little bit on a committee like this. That might be a reason that maybe we shouldn't take that step right now. And I think it probably would be easy for Barbara Kelly, who would also fit under the over 75 rule, somebody like that to get unanimous support. So maybe there's not a, I don't see a problem yet with having unanimous versus 2/3 support.
Only question I had, and it may have already been addressed once again, if we knew the origin of this request, if there was anybody who could speak to that. I didn't know if that was looped into Councilwoman Ryder's sentiments, or do we know of the origin of this request specifically? Why is it being requested, the threshold being requested to be lower?
So I think that additionally, part of it is that there could be some folks that maybe council members would like to have the option to speak on that as well, to have that option, and currently they don't, council does not have the option because it stops here. So that now sends it to that second round of checks and balances, and also that check and balance would also be applicable to council now as well. Yeah.
Because of the unanimous provision,
Right. The buck always stops
it
here.
always stops here. If it's not unanimous, council may never get an opportunity
They
to
wouldn't.
discuss an item. Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of a power board. I'm, pretty impressed.
And so we don't perceive that there's any other way that we could empower council. Would that be a matter of the rules of this committee or council rules? Like, what could be put in place where council would still have the opportunity to discuss something? Because I take, for instance, with Knox County Planning, if someone takes an issue, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if someone takes an issue to Planning Commission feels one way about it, do they not have the option to circumvent planning by way of council
Appeal.
and through an appeal? Okay, and so is that not a provision with this? And if it's not, is there not a way we can implement something like that?
Do we have is the appeal process an option for a person who comes before this committee with a petition to name something?
No, there's no provision for appeal.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ryder, as the former chair of this committee, to your recollection and also to you, Mr. Johnson, has that ever been discussed, allowing an appeal process? If so,
How handy I left the mic on. No, but I love that you guys brought that up, because that sounds like, see what happens when you discuss something? Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a super valid point that you brought up. Obviously, this is in here because lots of cities had rules about how and when they put a point in person's life when they put people's names on, but I think it's a super valid point that the buck stops at this committee if it's not unanimous. And no, as far as I know, there's no appeal process. I would say that maybe the city law department can weigh in on that, but I don't know of any. We can appeal all kinds of zoning administrator decisions and building administrator decisions.
Am I mistaken? I thought it was, PP&C was a recommending body, so that even if we would recommend denial, wouldn't it still move forward to council?
If it requires unanimous support,
It would stop.
it can't go anywhere. As far as an appeal process goes, that would be voluntary, I suppose, because there's no requirement that we offer, what is it called? Due process to applicants. I mean, Mr. Johnson can. Sure.
Yeah.
But it would be voluntary. Like, there's no expectation that the courts would have that we provide people due process for this. Yeah.
So I think that if that were the pleasure of the committee, would be, and we can go ahead, we can vote on this and then look at a substitute motion potentially to add an appeals process to where they can appeal if they are denied at this body, to go to council from there.
Might I
Yes.
make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
That if this body would like to explore the opportunity for an appeal, I think that that is something that our team and our law team can absolutely explore. I am not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV, but I do think that as an advisory body, I want to make sure that we need to investigate and make sure that we can legally have an appeal process as an advisory body. I'm not sure exactly how that works, and I think we just need to make sure that we do our due diligence about that and bring something back to the committee, if that is your pleasure.
Okay. Well,
Is that-
let's first see if this could pass, and if it can't, then we can go that direction, yes.
I would just say if this does not pass, I will make a motion, I will happily make that motion that we ask the city and its law department to explore avenues for adding an appeal process.
And bring it back to this body, okay. So we need a motion.
So we have a motion to recommend the amendment.
Can I withdraw my motion? Actually, I've changed my mind on this. Is that a thing?
If there's no objection from the committee, yes, you can withdraw a motion.
Was it second?
I didn't get a second, but there was lots of discussion,
Okay.
so.
All right, so the motion has been withdrawn. So with that withdrawal, would someone like to, do we need a motion or just a recommendation for the, Ms. Ball's area to
A request.
request?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so for the record, this committee would like to ask the city to explore a appeal process and what that would look like. And bring that information back to this body for further discussion and approval on. Okay. Ms. Ball, is there, I mean, again, we don't meet very often, and so do you have a timeline for us to consider where you could have that research done and have something back to us?
Jim?
Mike?
I think that, we're going to need a little bit of time to dig in on that, and we can certainly let you know when we're ready. And I don't know if that's something that you all feel like, yes, let's meet ASAP to do,
we're
or
not
let's
trying to-
meet
yeah, we're
like
not
when
trying
we
to-
have the next meeting, or, whatever.
Well, because we don't have a standing meeting, if you'll get back with me after you all have had an opportunity, because again, we're adding something additional to your workload that you didn't expect. So if you'll just get back with me and Mr. Johnson on what that potentially looks like, then we can alert the team and the committee and go ahead and try to put something, because we have to poll everyone to see when
Yes.
folks are available, so we'll just wait for you to
we'll
get back
work-
with us.
We'll work on getting a timeline to you by next week, by early next week.
I just had one question. I guess as a guide, are you wanting that, is the body wanting the appeal to council, such as if 2/3 of this committee did not, or this was not unanimous at this committee, if it's unanimous at council to send it back? I'm not quite sure where the appeal's going,
I think
who it's being appealed to.
Yeah, I think that the appeal goes to council, and from there, the council will up or down that appeal, just the same way that we do, with the majority vote.
The only wrinkle I think it presents itself is that the process involves the mayor making a recommendation also. So I don't know how that could be accomplished, but
Well-
I'm sure there are creative minds.
We'll dig in. We'll figure it out.
Do we need to deny the update then, or are we just tabling that? Because originally this started with, do we change it from unanimous to 2/3? So do we need to act on that at this time, or is the action that we're just waiting for a recommendation for an appeal process? Because it feels like it's two different things.
Right, so the motion was withdrawn, so we don't have a motion. So now what we're doing is we have we're making a recommendation.
Gotcha. Okay, so we could have, okay, so the motion I made was to approve it, but we could make a motion denying it, and then we've also got the recommendation to add the appeals process.
I mean, you're not required to act on any of these or these proposals.
Gotcha. Okay, that was my clarification.
Okay. So at this time, is there any other order of business that we have?
Yeah, there's a final edit. It's
Okay.
rather minor, but it could probably wait until future edits might be proposed. But I'll leave, that's up to the committee.
Well, since we're here, let's just go ahead and vote on that one, just to change that wording. That's a simple one. So I have a motion.
Before you vote on that, there's another, well, no, just a grammatical. On packet page 5, it's the exception at the top, so it's section 2-778. An exception where it says Knoxville, Knox County Planning Commission. I think we should strike commission. That's the board versus planning the staff of the board. And similarly, under 1.
So strike out the word commission and
Commission.
insert staff.
Or just Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Okay, just strike out the word commission.
And then B1, where it says shall be evaluated by the planning commission, that should be planning staff, because it's the staff that reviews it. It doesn't go to the board.
So strike out commission, insert the word staff.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you see any additional areas that we need to make those changes from commission to staff? Are those the only two?
None that I saw.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to make those corrections from commission to staff?
Move to approve.
And second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, Mr. Johnson, what else do we have?
That is the end of your agenda.
Okay. With that said, thank you all so much, and we are adjourned until sometime in the near future, hopefully. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Before the end of the year.